Hello there, I'm Mystic. Welcome to my new podcast where I have a new conversation with a guest every single day. And they all have some pretty passionate things to say about the state of the world. So join us today, subscribe, like, and share wherever you listen to us, and tell us your opinions. We may have you on the show. Oh, and remember, always have fun. Hello, listeners, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my Mystic podcast. I hope that you find yourself well and safe and good amongst these really challenging times. And help me to welcome Felicity Joy. I'm so excited to have her on the show. She has her own podcast and her own show called Simply Felicity Live. And she goes over all the things that she feels are very important. And she also invites many people from all over the world. And I was on her show twice, and that was so much fun. I was able to be myself completely. Welcome, welcome, Felicity Joy.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of your listeners for even supporting your podcast because you have an amazing voice, not just like the actual timbre of your voice, but what you have to say is so very important to the world. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, yes, welcome. So we were discussing, and we've discussed many things over the last couple of weeks, which has been quite interesting and fun. Can you share with us a little bit about how you feel amongst this pandemic and a little bit about who you are as a person?
Absolutely. So I just posted something on Facebook this morning that I would say is relevant to how I feel about the pandemic. And I said that um, a pandemic of idiocy can fortunately be cured by independent research. And I said, use your brain today. So that is how I feel. No mincing words with me. You don't have to have a gift of discernment to know how I feel about something. Um, Actually, a gift that this pandemic has given me is time and a lot of resources that people have given me to research. And I have always been intimidated by any type of scientific research. That was my nemesis in school. It wasn't my only one, but it was the one that I was not able to overcome. It was the only D I received in college. I went to Princeton University, and I got straight A's several times in high school, but when I didn't, it was because of my science grade. So I seriously had a challenge about that. But you know what? I just, many years ago, I researched how to become more detail oriented. I Googled that and I read a couple articles, and one of them said, slow down. And so
Wow.
that was the advice that I remember from the reading I did on that subject, and that is what I took with me when I was looking at these videos and doing the reading. I just slowed down. I watched videos up to 15 and 20 times to understand, and now I know I can understand anything that God wants me to understand. And I do not have to ever be, quote, a victim to a medical establishment or to any science person that wants to tell me something um, is right for me or this is what I should do. I never again have to be subject without doing my own research. So it's a very powerful feeling and a huge gift that this shutdown has given me.
So, what I hear you saying is that, quite like yourself, and congratulations for waking up and realizing that you have the power, you're recommending that other listeners as well take back their power from all sources and, channel that within themselves. And then they're able to take that knowledge and empower themselves. And it's like this perpetual cycle of empowerment. Is that correct?
100%. And you asked me like about who I am as a person. A lot of um, who I became as a person can kind of be defined by something I heard from a very wise man named Mike Murdoch. He's actually known for his wisdom and many books he's written. And one thing he said that I never quite understood, I heard it many years ago during my first marriage. He said, "You are nobody without an enemy." And
Mm.
I was like, well, I'm in trouble because I legit had never had one. But little did I know I was married to the first enemy I ever had in my life.
So he
People
came to
just
give you blessings, is what I'm hearing.
what? Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was kind of a hidden blessing, as many are, that if I did not take personal responsibility for for what came out of me in that marriage, I wouldn't have unearthed the blessing of becoming a warrior during that marriage. I had no interest in being a warrior. I always said I'm a lover, not a fighter. And I think that's one of the reasons why people naturally kind of liked me. Either people liked me or were indifferent to me, but I never had an enemy until I got married. And so that marriage shaped me and helped me to become who I am today because I chose to become better and not bitter. It was work, but I mean, if you're alive, you're doing something. I mean, you might as well spend your time doing things that are going to help you become healthy and whole. And that's what I chose to do.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Of
Thank you.
course.
You know, sometimes when you hear that somebody gets a divorce, the proper thing to say is congratulations. I mean, you can tell if they're like doing well right now or if they're totally broken, what you really should say. But honestly, sometimes it is just complete freedom, and that's what it was for me. I really believed in I chose to look at the scripture that God hates divorce and use that to prop up the fact that I personally never wanted to be divorced. My parents and his parents were not divorced. My parents had broken a cycle of divorce in our family, and I didn't want to re-enter our whole lineage into that. But we have a personal journey and a personal story to live out, and God is not going to be hamstrung by our heroism, desire to save our whole family lineage from blah blah blah. Like, we have a personal journey to live out, so we're not going to tell God, well, this is how it's going to go.
No,
Like,
no, it's
that's
the
not
other
how
way
it works.
around. It's the
And you
other way.
know what? But we get so controlling that we don't think about the fact that that's what we're actually doing.
Right.
We are trying to be Lord and say, no, I will not get a divorce. I said I never would.
Correct.
And God considers that control and you trying to be his Lord.
Right. And that's why that phrase came to my mind, is that make plans so God can laugh. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely understand you. We're living in these times right now where divorce has become so prevalent, and it's almost as if we are choosing our mates in a manner that is confusing to most people. So, what would you say to the young people that are listening to this podcast and are a little confused in regards to where they're heading?
Well, I love speaking to young people because they tend to be able to embrace my philosophy, which is this. Um, One of my first ever life verse, something I would consider a life verse, was Psalm 37:4, which is to delight thyself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And what I learned is that when we are delighting in God, he's actually placing his desires within us in order to bring them to pass. And so, while the rest of Christianity, I find, is kind of scared of the word desire and often tries to coax you to go against what you want, I find the quickest way to a happy life is to pursue those things that you want and desire. Because here's the great thing: even if you're wrong, you will find out more quickly by pursuing it 100% than by, you know, basically half-assing it. I mean, that's just the best way to put it. If you just halfway hit it, you're not going to really know. You're always going to have in the back of your mind, man, I really kind of want to pursue this, but I kind of know I'm not supposed to. You don't know you're not supposed to. If you really felt you weren't supposed to, then you wouldn't want it. You've got to at least ask yourself the question. And honestly, I do this. I'm like a philosopher. So I take things to the nth degree to see if they work. So, for example, if a murderer begins to say, somebody who wants to murder
Okay.
someone, let's put it like
Okay.
that, they literally want to kill
Okay.
someone. Now, let's sit here and examine the desire. I promise you that what the person is doing is examining the reason they want to kill someone. And that's why they're getting so worked up. And that's how they actually convince themselves to do it. I'm not talking about continuously meditating over the reason you want them dead. I am talking about your desire. Why do you think that that is worthy of death? And break that down. Like, really think about why you think that, because there is a breakdown in logic to say that anything someone else did to you is worthy of death. You cannot, with a logical person, talk that through and end up in the same place, because they're not talking it through. They are just meditating on the offense and on
On
the
the
hurt
action,
in their heart.
right, on the action that they want to commit this heinous crime. Um,
They are not evaluating it against things they've done to others. They are not considering the hurt they've already inflicted on other people. No one is worse than you. You're not thinking it through. I'm
and in
telling
this
you.
case, we're
If you
speaking about marriage. I just wanna
Oh, right, right,
circle,
right.
yeah,
So
I just
going
wanna
back, and I
circle
had thought
again,
about that.
back
I have
to,
actually thought about
yeah,
that, wanting to kill,
yeah, because
you
that's a
know,
bit
when I was
extreme. And with
married.
all due respect, if somebody who's listening wants to do that, they definitely should seek some medical attention. To be very
Well,
real.
listen, when I was in my first marriage, I did have those thoughts. But I honestly did what I'm telling you right now. I thought about it, and I thought about, is what he's doing worth actual dying, as opposed to me getting off my butt and like leaving or doing something else.
Correct.
Like, does he really need to die? That's what I'm trying to
You're
say.
talking
Like,
about a
I
victim mentality. So to
that's
yeah,
exactly what
to
I'm
to
talking about.
to be able to surrender a victim mentality, which it feels like, during this current pandemic, I'd say a good 95% of the individuals that I've spoken to, and of course I'm not speaking about you, but they're speaking from a victim mentality, and that renders them powerless to do something. And so I'm interested in hearing, if you're open to it, of course, in sharing a little bit about what was it that led you to that. Essentially, what was your ex-husband doing that led you to have those thoughts?
Well, I want to answer both parts of that. So the thing with my ex was that my life had completely changed. On the outside, I seemed an incredibly competent person. I actually was hiding a lot of insecurity that I actually didn't know I had. And so he was able, through being very mean to me, derogatory, abusive, etc., he was able to pull out all of my insecurity, which is actually really important, because you're not able to face something you're in denial about or don't even know that you're ignorant about. But of course, that was a few steps down the line of me seeing it that way. At the time, it just looked like this person had ruined my really good life. I mean, I was an incredibly good student. I went to Princeton University. I was most likely to everything. I directed plays. I won awards. I mean, everything was looking up for me. Then I got born again. I'm like, oh my God, like everything was already amazing. Now it's going to be like double, triple amazing. And
Right.
so I met him within like 4 months of being saved. He grew up in church. I'm like, yes, this is fantastic. He asked me to marry him. And then Dr. Jekyll meet Mr. Hyde. Literally, in the limo, he changed on me.
What? Like on
Oh,
the
yeah.
day of your marriage.
On the day, hon. And people always want to say, well, how did you miss God? What can you learn from it? Now, I learned a ton from it, but I didn't miss God. I actually, I actually fleeced God about him, like Gideon. And I said, if you want me to marry him, and I went through like three different things. One of them was, tell him, I forgot what it was. Tell him something. I'm not going to tell him, but you tell him. Prove to me that he can hear from you. And he did. He did. And we're in the car driving one day and he said, I was thinking such and such. I was like, oh my God. He's like, that's number one. You got another one? Literally, that's what God said to me. I did it 3 times and he passed everything. I was meant to be in that situation, but not only God's not into torture. He was also giving him an opportunity, right? God doesn't control people. He gave him a choice to possibly choose a better way because of the prayers of his mother.
Hmm.
But had he not chosen that better way, which at the time he didn't, I God still counted on me that I was going to decide to be better and
Mm,
not bitter,
that's
like I
great.
said.
That's great. I love that.
I want to say with the pandemic where I've been at with this. I would love to explain my logic on my decisions because I've angered a lot of people.
In
So
what
I want to
way?
say
Wait, hold
this.
on a second. What do you mean by that statement? That's a really huge statement that you're making. How have you angered a lot of people?
Okay, well, you can go to my Facebook page and it's really obvious. People are very angry at the things I've posted, but mostly it is because I feel that the stay home order is a violation, particularly of my religious rights, but also of my biblical beliefs. Proverbs 18:1, that he who isolates himself seeks his own desire and rages against all wise counsel. The Bible is very against
Hmm.
self-isolation. Hebrews 10:25, do not neglect the assembling of yourselves together as is the habit of some, but all the more so when you see the day approaching, which I see this day of Jesus's return
Hmm.
approaching major. If you don't see it, you're not reading the Bible. So it's approaching and we're not meeting and you've relegated us to online, and that is a violation of my rights. And so I have violated this order. I have been trying desperately to get more than 10 people in my home, and I finally did it on Easter, of
Oh my
course, because
goodness.
God is so good. And but I've been having people over this entire time. Why? Because people are hurting. And God said I'm a minister of the gospel. I do not turn blind eye to hurting people in the ministry of reconciliation God has called me to. I've had people come over for meals, people that actually have had trouble having food and having sustenance. This one girl is living with her parents who are absolute tyrants. She is an adult. I mean, she's in her early 20s, but they don't want her they don't cook for themselves. They eat out all the time and they don't want her using the fridge. So she's legit supposed to
That
eat
doesn't
out
make
all the
sense.
time on her mediocre. Doesn't make sense. So yes, I do. I have her come over and get food and I
Oh,
cook for her and she spends time with my family. I have had other people whose life has been work, their wife, and their family, but their family now
right.
won't see them.
Right.
And so, yeah, come over, bring your wife. I haven't met her. Come over for dinner, spend time with me. I've had my girlfriend who has been going absolutely stir crazy with her 5 kids, which frankly she has had some problems learning how to have a non-chaotic home. She is really working on it, but it's hard. And now she's forced into the situation with the 5 kids, homeschooling, her big law job and stuff. Like, yeah, come over, honey. Let's do a sleepover and bring your kids over for Easter. I'll plan a whole fun day for them and take the stress off you. Yes, that's what I do
So how
because
many
that's who
people
I
did you
am.
end up
And that's
having?
what the church is. So I was able to end up having 13
Wow.
people on
So you
Easter.
most certainly went over the 10. Yeah, yeah.
CDC
Yeah.
guidelines, I did. And the reason I did was not just Bible verses, okay? I also, like I said, it pushed me into research on viruses, on contagion, and I learned these things for myself, that germ theory on which this whole thing is based is just a theory, has never been proven. And the reason it's not been proven now is because ever since they tested it in the Spanish flu days, they were not able to prove it, and now no one is interested in actually doing the expensive research to find out what actually does cause people to get sick at
Well, it
the same
sounds like
time.
it's a
But
weakened
it's
immune
not what they
system.
tell
That's
you.
what it sounds like to me. I could be completely wrong. I am certainly not a doctor.
That is a part of it. That is a part of it. I'll tell you another part of it is um, it is the same divine intelligence that exists in all of nature. How do flowers know when to bloom? How do birds
Right.
know when to fly south? It's the same thing that exists in all of our bodies that know when is a good time to purge. You know that we have to purge, we have to cleanse. A lot of people don't do it on purpose. So their body does it through things like flus and through things like colds. We know that not everything in our environment, both internal and external, is good. We know not all the food is right. We know stuff in the air is wrong. We know things, even clothing that we put on our bodies sometimes have irritants and things in them. So your body has to cleanse
Especially
that
now.
sometimes.
Especially
And
now.
there
Yeah.
it and there are optimal times for purging. And so there, you can have many people in your house get sick at the same time, but maybe not all. Why? Well, maybe the person who didn't get sick was sick recently, or maybe they are a little bit
They have a
cleaner.
healthier
Eat
immune
cleaner
system.
or
And sometimes, yeah,
healthier
sometimes
immune
it's
system.
parents
So,
or like, I've seen this many times where mothers watch everyone else get sick and yet they don't get sick because somehow, some way, that divine intelligence is saying, hey, you have to take care of your family right now. And then they get sick.
hello, how many
Yeah, and
times
then they
has
get
that
sick a
happened?
couple months later. So it sounds like what you're saying is that this is outside of the obvious, which is, we're dealing in this 3D reality, and yes, there's a pandemic and yada yada. However, more importantly, from my respect, is that it sounds like this is a spiritual warfare more than anything.
Oh, no doubt. Our battle is never against flesh and blood. And I want to even say, like, even going further, because everything we just said is something easy to understand, but what people don't know is, like, this research study I saw in the
Mhm.
with the Spanish flu. They really wanted to understand, how did all these people get sick at the same time. They literally injected mucus from sick Spanish flu patients into healthy people. 300 out of 300
But how
times
did
they
the
did not
healthy
get sick.
people agree to participate in this study?
No, that I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't look that up, but I have seen people do it now anecdotally on themselves. The person I learned this from, when he was learning about viruses and trying to heal himself and didn't want to do the things the doctor said, when he got better, he injected himself with viruses
Wow.
and didn't get them. It literally is a complete myth. I just tested it recently. My husband was sick, and I kissed him full in the mouth, and we had an intimate night together. Nope, didn't get sick. I mean, those are anecdotal things, but I'm just looking at this study and seeing, like, oh my gosh, do people even know this? That people have actually been injected with disease and they didn't get the disease. This is hokey
Can you
smoky is
refer
what's
our
going on.
audience
And we
to what you're talking about? Is there a website that they can go to and look at this for themselves?
These are YouTube videos, and while we're talking, I will
Okay.
just Google and get the names so that you'll be able to
Thank you. Thank you.
look those things
And
up
so here's
yourself.
I wanted to circle back to who you are during this pandemic and what's going on, because that's a really important piece that I would like, if you can, to answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that question. I probably need you to delve more into what you mean by that, but I want to say this. I have asked the question on Facebook, how do you want history to remember you during this time? I mean, do you just want to say, I stayed home? and I saved lives. Do you really believe that? Like, but if that is what you want your legacy to be, I mean, at least own that intentionally. But
Mm.
that's not good enough for me. I cannot look my grandchildren in the face and say I stayed home and I saved lives, because I don't even believe that, and I know that's not true. But like, really, you know what I mean? You have more in you than that, and I really think that, again, people are seeking their own desire, like Proverbs 18:1 said. They're doing what they want to do anyway. People were unfriendly before this. Now they won't even look
Hmm.
you in the eye because they're scared of you. Our battle is spiritually. People are trying to separate us. They're trying to make us afraid of each other. And there's a whole plot and reason behind that. But the awesome thing is that I like it. I learned this many years ago, that the word crisis is from a Chinese word that means both danger and opportunity. So yeah, there's a real spiritual danger here, because fear will kill you in a minute. It'll kill you way more than any virus will. But you can also take the opportunity to grow and to be more than you were before this. So that's what I'm wanting to do, is take advantage. And my immediate confession when I saw this happening in the world was to say that a bad time for the world is a great time for the people of God. And that has been my confession, and that has been
Well, some
actually
people
what
might
I've
say that
experienced. You know,
your actions and your behavior are irresponsible to your family because you're allowing these individuals to come into your home during a global pandemic in which we are supposed to be on lockdown, quote unquote. And that perhaps you may go to prison or get a fine. I mean, how do you feel about those things?
yeah, so people that tell me that are telling me based on their quote unquote
Hmm.
research from the media. And I'm talking to them about independent research from qualified scientists and doctors. So I'm not intimidated by people that just watch TV. I will never be intimidated by people who are quoting me based
Yeah.
off of television. You know what I mean? They they have told you a vision, and I am not interested. Like that, I've already evaluated that vision, and it's based
Tell
on
a
fear.
vision. I
And
just
love
wanted to,
will always
yeah.
be
Yeah,
held. Yeah, yeah. It's
correct.
a channel. They are channeling from the devil, and they are programming you. It's You are watching programs by which they are programming your mind. So that is not intimidating. I know that love is greater than fear. I know that love is stronger than death. And so I don't fear any man, and I certainly don't fear jail cells in which two-thirds of the New Testament was written. I have my forefathers from the Bible to show me that I don't have to fear being in jail. I don't have to fear political suicide or anything like that. I don't care about the opinions of man. And the great thing is, online nowadays, um, authenticity is what wins. People say that you want to be in business, you can't talk about your political views. Well, maybe you can't, but God has told me that I should. And I know people like Lair Lightner, Danny Johnson, Real Talk Kim, different people like that, Sandy Krakowski. They are bold, and they say their views online, and their businesses have prospered and flourished. So I already have examples of people that have been themselves and are able to flourish and prosper, because people appreciate authenticity. Real people don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with everything, but they like knowing where you stand, and they're willing to do business with you based on that, because
Absolutely.
they
And
know you're
it's
not going to
really
lie to
interesting.
them.
Yeah.
So I have no
It's
fear.
it's 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 very apparent, and that's wonderful to hear. It's very refreshing, especially now in the midst of this madness and prior and stepping into this new world, of course. And you're most certainly correct. I feel that so many individuals all across the globe are just really exhausted and tired of hearing all this BS. Because, and not just BS about the pandemic, but BS about, oh, okay, so we're going to separate you by color and age and religion. Right,
And
right.
everything's racism. Yeah, if you don't like Super Bowl halftime show and looking direct in someone's
Right,
crotch, I'm a
right,
racist. Really?
right, right,
Really?
right.
I don't think so. I think I don't want to look in somebody's
Yeah,
crotch. I think that's what it is, actually. I don't care what race you are. I don't want
right.
my head in your crotch,
Right,
okay?
and it's funny.
Like,
Well, it
that's what it
sounds
is.
like you're saying that perhaps, and I don't want to say something for you, but I'm just curious, and I'm just going to pose this to you. It sounds like you feel that perhaps what we're being fed, spoon fed, I call it, is mere propaganda, and not just now, just everything that. Okay.
No, it's
Okay. And so, and
100%.
so I just want to take this
100%.
moment to share with the listeners that perhaps most people need to read Mein Kampf. And Mein Kampf is the
Mm,
ultimate guide in propaganda. And if you were to read it, then you can understand
yeah,
the world in which we live. And then from that vantage point, we can
it's a
most
textbook.
certainly um,
Text.
transform this world into a world in which we want to live, and that's called heaven.
Yeah. Amen. And that is what we're called to do, right? Days of heaven here on earth as it is in heaven.
And that,
That is
right.
our call. That is our mandate, and that's what we pray
Yeah,
over and over
that's the
again,
ultimate
you
prayer.
know?
It's the prayer that
Um
Jesus said we should all pray, day and night, and pray that, and somehow, some way, this will transform.
so we have to know what is the culture of heaven, right? In order to do that. And so it's important to like really think about that, but also access people who know. Kat Kerr is somebody that you can look up on YouTube and Facebook, and she has actually been to heaven many times. She's a prophet from heaven. She doesn't prophesy about human events or personal prophecy. She prophesies about heaven and what's to come. And so, see, you have to, whatever way you can take seriously that mandate to bring days of earth here on earth as it is in heaven, you have to like take that seriously and find out what is the culture of heaven. The culture of heaven is a culture of respect, it's a culture of love, it's a culture that appreciates and celebrates difference. Why did God make the races? Because or the different colors, because he has appreciation for difference. He loves it. So the way that the world um uh denigrates people for it is the way God celebrates diversity and loves difference. So we have to learn to like really appreciate it the way he does. I mean, basically, however the world handles something, God handles it like 180 degrees away from that. You could look at it that way, or you can just look at the Bible and see the way he's wanting us to love each other. Why did he say, like, it's as the precious oil running down Aaron's beard is my people dwelling in unity? When I get together with other believers that don't go to my church, I mean, the fellowship is unreal because it really pleases God. Yes, he wants us in a local church. Yes, he wants us having fellowship with other believers, but he also wants us just as a family of faith to be able to get together on things that are more important than our different differences from between what are those things called, denominations. you know he wants us to be able to love each other for what's really true and important. So these are the things that are important, and these are the things
That's
that
wonderful.
i
And
that i
so,
promote, that
Kat
I'm
Kerr,
into.
just for
um
those of you who may be interested, is spelled cat, like a cat, like the animal cat, and then Kerr, her last name is Kerr, and she's on YouTube. You could type in part.
but cat is
Oh,
with
okay. So
a K.
cat, because there's,
Cat is with a K.
okay, I see. So, but you can still put cat, as and it comes up. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and it comes up.
But thank you for that.
She
Thank
has
you for
pink
that.
hair, so she has pink hair.
Yeah.
God made her get the pink hair. She is not a pink hair kind of chick. God told her to do it because there's a lot of color in heaven, and a lot of uniqueness, and he doesn't like us being boring. So he actually
Yeah,
had her
Kecker.
get, but anyway, you'll know
K-A-T
who it is with the pink hair. And to
Kerr.
give you
And
the
how do you,
other,
so here's a couple
yeah,
things that have come up for me. Number one, how do you know she's not a false prophet? And before you answer that, I want to also circle back to saying it's really interesting and wonderful how you amended yourself in regards to the races, because let's be very, very, very clear, people. There's only one race on the globe, and that's the human race.
absolutely.
That's the human race. And so, yes, there are different
That's
cultures,
it.
there are different colors, there are, different people and whatnot, but there's only one race. Yes, absolutely. I just had to
Amen.
say that.
That's 100% true. No, I'm so glad that you did. I really appreciate accuracy, so it never bothers me. Like I really appreciate it. So I had someone actually who knows science a lot more than me ask me a similar question. How do I know that the things I'm reading
Hmm.
or videos scientifically are true? The way I know it is I start with what, like Oprah would say, what do you know for
Wait
sure?
a second.
There are things
Okay,
that you base your
Oprah.
life on, things that you,
Yeah, no. That's all I can say to that. And I won't go any further, but go ahead.
well, just
No,
because someone has a
no,
lot of problems doesn't
I've
mean
had
that some of their
personal
quotes aren't correct.
interactions
But
with her and they were not pleasant. And I will not say it more. Yeah.
I believe I believe you about that, but I do like that phrase because there are things that we know, that we know, that we know, that we base our life on. And it's those things that I feel very, very confident about. And that's how I build my intelligence. So anything I'm learning, I attach it to something I already know. And then I build out from there. So the way I know that I'm not being lied to by the scientific things I'm looking at is because it attaches to things I know. When I started my defiance on the government orders, it was based on what I know for sure, which is Proverbs 18:1, Hebrews 10:25. I don't just know those scriptures to quote them to you. I know them through my life. I know that those principles and things are important. So when I read scientific research that backs that, I'm like, well, that's true because that goes with what I already know. When I listen to a prophet that says things that are based on the fruit of the spirit, in Galatians, I know the fruit of the spirit. I know those are principles of life that work. Other things like that, like things that I know that I've tested, that I've seen work or I've seen work in other people's lives. If what they're saying is in alignment with that, then I attach it.
So
That's
it
how I build
sounds
my
to me
intelligence,
like
is the best
you're
way I can
being
say it.
moved and stirred and guided by your heart, which is where the love comes from, right? And a gut instinct that's innate within you. You're following
Yeah.
yourself. You've become this empowered woman based on all the trials and tribulations that you had to go through in order to be the woman that you are today. I am
Bingo.
recognizing that you and I are one. That's
I mean,
wonderful. And we're all one, right? We're all one.
it is. We are, but it's amazing to be in alignment, in a world that runs counter to the way you do things. But it's amazing to meet someone that you're so in alignment with, and we know we're sisters, but to actually like, I look at you, I'm like, my sister. That's
Yes.
like an
Yes,
amazing
yes. It's and
feeling.
you feel like you're
It
home
really
because
is.
that's how I feel. And there's this level of comfort. So,
Yes,
I want to move on to
totally.
something that's really important because we are running out of time. But okay, thank you.
Well, let me give those doctors' names first, really quick. Yeah, you can look up Dr. Kaufman, Kauffman. He's one of the whistleblowers from the medical community. And the other guy actually should be a medical doctor for all the study he's done. But anyway, his name is Tom Barnett. And he's from Australia, and one of his videos really blew up. But what I call it, it's a science lesson to non-scientists. So if you're a non-scientist like me, you may really enjoy this because a 5-year-old can
Thank
listen to
you.
it and be
Thank you
like,
for that.
ah,
And
thank
so
you, got it.
essentially these are YouTube channels And if people cannot find them for whatever reason, they can visit your Facebook, your website. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So you can find me, Felicity Joy, on Facebook. There are a lot of Felicity Joys, but not many of them have color. So you should be able to find me pretty easily. Also, my page is Felicity Joy Speaks, and it's the only one with that name, Speaks. And then my other page, another one of my pages is Black Conservative Female, and that was a page that was birthed out of my Simply Felicity podcast, which you can find on anchor.fm, same place that you're listening to this one. So thank you for that. I do want to encourage everyone as well. The truth itself is a guide. There are those of us on the way that could be signposts and guideposts, but the truth itself will guide you. You don't have to worry about, oh, I couldn't find this, I couldn't find that. You're the fact that you want to know
Absolutely,
truth,
absolutely.
truth
And
will
this all
show up.
leads me to
Promise you that.
now, um, because the fact that you said you are conservative, can you share with the listeners what exactly does that mean?
Well, first thing I want to do is give credit to my first husband because he is the reason I am a conservative, another gift from my marriage. And it's good to bless those broken roads in your life. So, a conservative is someone that is, like we talked about before, does not bend or bow to a victim mentality. They are people that believe in personal responsibility, limited government. They are actually people that appreciate diversity. They are the most tolerant of any people because there's a lot of diversity, especially now within the conservative party. They are often people that embrace biblical values. They are pro-life and pro gun, pro Second Amendment, the right to um, defend ourselves, bear arms, because we do not trust the government to be our ultimate parent. And we know that that government can turn on us. So we should
And the
have the right
government
to
is not
defend
within our
ourselves if things
homes
go
or our
awry.
property.
Um,
So
Hello. Exactly. We have personal ownership, personal responsibility, personal rights. And so, yeah, freedom of religion, free speech,
so would you
um,
consider yourself
all
to be
constitutionalists,
a
all
quote
of
unquote
that.
Republican?
Uh, yes, I would. I mean, I have voted that way. However, since the election of President Trump, I have found out a lot more about the fact that the Republican Party was not really for me until now, at least those that support President Trump, because he is an independent and he is not a part of the machine and those that are pushing for a one world government, as those who were Republicans were before then. They've all been part of the same elitist club that has not been for our best interest. So I didn't know those things at the time, but yeah. So I'm more conservative, more independent in my thinking, Bible based in my
Thank you. Thank you
worldview.
for sharing that.
Those
And
are the
it's
things that are
interesting that some
important to
people
me.
forget, and I'm here to remind them that, irrelevant of how long ago it was, President Lincoln was a Republican, and President Lincoln did free the slaves. And that's really important. Okay. And so
That's right.
these messages of and I personally need to add that Republicans also have morals and values and do believe in God. 1,000 times yes. And yeah,
Yeah.
they're calling forth to have God in our White House, to have God in the schools. um and of course some people do not tolerate or feel comfortable with that, but that's just the way that the system is right now. um and it's not to say that whether you are Republican or a liberal, or a Democrat, or whatever you may be, is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you stand for truth. That's the most important thing. And if that means that we
Exactly.
must all rise, then we must all rise and obtain what's freely due and just to us, which is our freedom. Our freedom is being attacked right now. And we must all
Yep.
rise in this country, in this beautiful nation that we call America. We need to start sharing what is important to us. And I'm sure that our civil liberties are absolutely important to
Oh,
everybody. So that's like, yeah, I can blanket that. I'm almost 100% sure, if not 95% sure, that all of the listeners here and all across the United States are about civil liberties.
yep, absolutely. And um, we fought to get those liberties. We fought for the freedoms initially, and we have to be at any time prepared to
Especially
fight
now.
again.
Yep.
So that's the bottom line. We can't be so yeah, we can't be so lazy and so like settled in the fact that we've always had these liberties and then just start being a whiner. Look, if we have to fight again, we have to
Right.
fight again. It was worth it back then and it's worth it now. The people that died and bled for these things, for my right to vote, for your right to vote, you know, as people of color, as women, etc., as a country, even to break from England, etc., all of that is worth fighting for again. And so I end
that's
again with the
that's an
question, how do you
excellent
want
ending.
history to
Thank you
remember you?
so much, Felicity Joy. And I might add, Dr. Felicity Joy, if you want to take 30 seconds and amend that and say why and how and what type of doctor you are.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to be licensed as a minister within a few months here. But my doctorate is in my PhD is in Christian counseling. So every degree I've gotten, I got for a specific reason. I got my college degree in English, my master's in teaching because I was teaching a lot of acting classes and started my own children's theater company. A lot of people in children's theater have theater background, but not teaching background. And I thought that it really has an effect on the children, the way these adults act a lot of times in children's theater. But anyway, and then as a life coach, really wanted to get more training in counseling because sometimes I was referring people out as a life coach if they needed deeper counseling, and now I'm able to keep them in house because what I've found is if somebody God wants me working with a person, he wants me working with a person and I don't need to be referring them out. I don't have very many clients anymore because I only take clients based on who God's calling to me. Um, and because I do deep work, so I don't really fool around with it. The life coaching and the ministry now, I call myself a community minister, and that is sort of what I'm getting the licensing for. Is to continue the work in my community. I host community dinners. My next project that I'm interested in is having making community benches in parks, and this is something that has been used to fight suicide rates in countries that are called the happiest countries in the world. They've studied them and the different things that they do to promote community. And what a community bench is if you sit on a community bench in a public park, the person who sits down next to you is committed to
That's
listening to you
beautiful.
non-judgmentally. And I believe that is such a key to love. And so I'm really out here to fight the suicide rates and to fight for people that want to live a beautiful life and want to say, you know what,
Yeah,
I'm the happiest
and it's
person I
not
know.
easy.
That is
It's
my
most
goal with every
certainly
person.
um during a point of transformation in someone's life, there is a type of fight and to get to where they are hoping to go. And of course, my heart goes out to all the individuals who are struggling with suicide at the moment. and perhaps maybe throughout their lives. So I wish you many, many blessings, and I hope that you can win this spiritual battle, because at the end, that's what it is. So thank you again, Dr. Felicity Joy, for joining our listeners and for sharing from your heart. I feel so humbled and blessed by all of what you're sharing. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners. As always, united we stand. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, subscribe, and review. We will come at you with many more topics, and remember, united we stand.